Nako, it's time. Hey, Dumela, South Africa, Azania, SouthAfrica. How's it going? Welcome back to the program. It's been a while since we've done this. I was on my magical mystery tour there, LSD-induced trip to South Africa. Why else would I go there? Back in August, September. Then a trip over to the British Isles for the Rugby League World Cup. And now I'm back. And today we don't have the whole crew, but we do have Dumo Denga. Dumo, how are you doing there, brother?
I'm great, Chris. It's a very nice Wednesday. It's warm in South Africa. So I'm really enjoying the heat right now. And the nice thing about the summer is that on some days it gets very hot, and then other days there's rain as well. And it's interesting. We had a lot of rain, but we still had water problems. But that's our government for you.
Oh, as in no drinkable potable water.
As in no water.
Oh, is no water whatsoever? Not even dirty water. No water.
Not
okay.
even, yeah.
Well, not to rub it in, but I'm going to drink this root beer here. Not beer, but root beer from this clean source of Pennsylvania water right here. Hang on. Make sure it doesn't bubble over with carbon dioxide. Whoops, I must be a climate criminal. Carbon dioxide. Got to be careful there. Anyway, but, you and I were chatting just before we went on a few moments ago, and you were talking about you were kind of sore, and I was like, did you get the crud or something? Like, no, I've upped my exercise routine. And we started chatting, and I said, a lot of people tell me, and I was talking to someone last night about this, they exercise, lose weight. And I hate to hear these New Year's resolutions all the time. This year, I'm going to lose weight. Listen, if that's why you're exercising, folks, you've got the wrong motivation. Mm-hmm. Exercise should be about your physical and mental well-being, your health. The weight, if it's unnecessary and you're not overeating and you exercise regularly, will come off in due time. Just relax. You'll get to a natural state if you're trying to lose weight. You should exercise for your cardiovascular system, for your heart. It's the most important muscle you've got. I mean, after all, if your calf seizes up, you're still alive. If your heart seizes up, it's game over.
Yeah.
And you're knocked out of the FIFA World Cup just like that. Bye-bye, Iran.
Yeah, talking about that. I mean, the World Cup. I mean, I watch soccer a lot, but it only occurred to me now that the World Cup is on. But I got to admit, it's been a very interesting tournament so far.
Yeah.
I mean, in South Africa, I mean, if people are supporting Senegal, they're supporting all the African teams. It seems like that's a tradition. So whichever African team goes to the next round, the whole of Africa, including South Africa, will support them. Because obviously, in South Africa, we can't produce a team. And it's interesting. I think we are more passionate about soccer than the United States.
Yeah.
But yet the United States can produce a much better team. And Australia and Canada. So it's amazing.
Well, to be fair, we didn't qualify last time, so we missed a World Cup cycle there. But we're back this time. And actually, I'm not a fan of the beautiful game. I think it's a pansy game. But I mean, I can watch the World Cup. And I will watch Bayern Munich. That's a team I like. But other than that, I've been a fan of theirs since 1984. Other than that, I'm not really into it. But I will say that the problem with the Americans is just always so turgid and boring. But I watched I saw the end of the England-USA game because I was at the airport coming back from England, ironically. And I caught that at the airport while I was waiting for my flight. And I was really concerned they were going to choke there at the end, but they held their own. So, okay, that's fine. 0-0. That was like the fifth 0-0 final in this. That's a record. They never had more than one in a FIFA World Cup. This is like, snooze fest in Doha.
Right.
And so that was the first thing. Second thing is that I watched the Iran game, and I have to say this, Dumo. The first half, if soccer was like that all the time, it would be an incredible game. I mean, the Americans were attacking. They were opening up the field. They had lots of shot on goal. The Iranians did a fair job of shutting them down at the last moment over. It was an exciting first half. And then Christian Pulisic's goal was just unbelievable. Unfortunately, he was injured, serious. I don't know if he got a bruise to his kidney or something, but it was pretty serious. But and he soldiered on to the halftime. But the second half was like, it was back to soccer, man. It's like, God, you could have ended at 38 minutes and it would have been a brilliant game.
Right. I think now that you mentioned that, it just reminds you a lot about American sports. Because I mean, in high school, I did play basketball.
Yeah.
And it is fundamentally different. And I think there's been suggestions to actually make soccer a bit more like basketball, in the sense that you make the field a bit smaller. You have 5 versus 5. You have running substitutions, because in soccer you have 3 substitutions, and also remove the offside rule. That's another thing that
is such crap. I mean, that second goal by Americans, he's offside by his shoulder. I mean, how can you, when you're running at full speed, looking at the person to your side, making sure you're not past them, know that you're not past the person on this? It's just, no one has eyes in 360 degrees. Okay, listen, I can't take a game seriously where they can't stop the clock when a player's down. And at the end of the game, it comes down to a guy who gets a suitcase full of cash stuffed in his hotel room. 12 minutes of bonus. What? No. Stop the clock. Tend to the injured player and start the game again. I mean, who are you deceiving? And then look how stubborn they were. It took them so many years. Ghana and South Africa were cheated in the 2010 FIFA World Cup on plays that was it Ghana and Uruguay, or was it South Africa and Uruguay, where the Uruguayan was in the net, the defender, and used his hand. That's a goal, but it wound up being a penalty kick. How can it be a penalty kick? It's a goal. Just look, it's the beautiful game, my ass. I'm sorry. It has some serious flaws. Not to mention the behavior of its supporters. I mean, you can't go to a game in the UK without going through a limited part of the stadium. Everywhere else in the world, I get a ticket. I can enter anywhere, walk around the stadium, patronize all the shops, all the food, get the programs, buy the kit. No, in the UK, you can only go in this gate because our hooligans will tear the place down and kill everybody. Good Lord.
Yeah, and I think it's a culture thing, because one thing I noticed about American sports is that there's always a winner and a loser. Always. I mean, think about it. I don't know if American
life, man.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I liked about it, is that especially when I was watching NBA and so forth, is that like if it's a tie, you're gonna go into OT and you're gonna go and go until there's a winner. So I think for me, that is why I think American sports are much more entertaining. In my opinion, because of the fact that there's always a winner and a loser. There's always a result.
Well, that was always a shortcoming of football games, American football, NFL, and also of more so the National Hockey League, because it's more difficult to score a goal in hockey than it is to get points in football. But football addressed that many years ago, and they have a system now, so it almost never ends in a tie, although it does. We had a couple this year, but it's so rare. And then in the National Hockey League, they've come up with they went to a really ingenious method in which they go from 5 players to a 5-minute overtime with 3 players. And when there's 3 players on the ice, there's so much more space. It opens things up. A mistake can be, taken advantage of so much easier, and you almost never end in a tie. It used to be fully 20 to 30% of games were ties, and that's not good for sport. That's like soccer. So they changed the system, and actually the overtime is really exciting. Plus, if you get rewarded, if you go to the overtime, you still get 1 point on the log, because you got a tie. Okay. If you win, you get the second point. So it's really cool. It rewards teams for not sitting back and playing defensively and just earning a tie. Yep.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, and I think perhaps maybe in soccer that could come about at some point. But I think it needs a brave step. But I got a feeling that if someone suggests something of this nature, I can see the British, because they say that football is they say football, and when I say football I mean soccer.
I know.
They say England is the home of football, and they say, well, we never done it like this, it was always like this, we don't need to change. And that's the same thing that happened with the and I know we just changed, but I know we're going off into sports, but there's this one topic that I think is also relevant. If you look at like the big soccer teams in England, right, I think the big ones are mainly owned by Americans, and they suggested that we have a super league like the NBA. And I like that idea, but again, because of sentimentality, it was shut down. So I really think that, I think if really people want to have more, let's say, Americans watching soccer, they're going to have to make the rule. They're going to have to change the rules.
Well, they have to stop the clock. I mean, you have to have stoppages so that people can make money. That's how advertising comes into play. I don't know how soccer makes any money. Honestly, I mean, I'm being facetious, but I mean, it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey, and even rugby all make sense how they make money. There's a stoppage. You can get advertising in there, and that's what drives the revenue. That's why that's why America is the most valuable sports market on the planet. You know, Manchester United's club value aside, I mean, and the Premier League, it's that's why American sports, I mean, we make money off of freaking lacrosse. We have professional lacrosse here that makes money. I mean, that's how much money there is to be made, despite Biden inflation. You know, we still can manage to make money, which I think is a good segue. But let's not quite leave the FIFA World Cup yet. I want to talk about the politics of FIFA World Cup, and then we'll get back into So how about the Germans? And then they lost to Japan. And then what's even funnier is 2 days later, guess what they said? We were probably a little too focused on being political and not paying attention to football. You think? You think?
You know what? When I saw that, I was very surprised. I just felt that that's not the time to do it. I mean, I understand that, you know, one can look at Middle Eastern countries and question the treatment of people in the, as they say, LGBTQ community or the alphabet community.
Look, but again, they treat everybody that way. They don't single out gays. Exactly. They treat white people that way. They treat Filipinos that way. They're just arrogant shits. That's who they are.
There we go. And I think as well, even if that, let's say that was the case, that they only treated gay people like that, right?
Let's assume that.
Let's assume that, right? Even if that was the case, I don't think that's the time. It's not the right time to do it.
No.
I mean, I was very disappointed when I saw Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, you know, in an NFL game, you know? And this is of a similar nature. I'm just like, guys, look, you know, this is sports bring people together, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
The fact that we can have a World Cup in a Middle Eastern country that has laws that we disagree with and people can still play there and have a good time just shows what sports can do.
And I mean, where else are you going to find 40,000 Iranians and Americans in a stadium together, not murdering each other, but at that game? I mean, so get over yourselves. Stop the politics.
Talking about that, right? I heard one story. I think it was nearing the end of World War II.
Yeah.
And I think there were Germans and English people. I don't know if they were prisoners of wars or something, but if they just got so tired of the war that they started, the soldiers started becoming friends, and they started playing soccer against each other.
Yeah, that's a true story. That's the first World War, if I'm not mistaken. Yep.
I think it was, the first one, the First World War. Yes, First World War. Mm-hmm. So and I'm like, okay, there you go. Even in times where countries are in conflict, you'll see other people from those countries getting along, shaking hands, and playing a game of soccer with each other. But here you have the Germans going around trying to be divisive. Look, even if their message is correct, it's not the time. There's a time and place for everything.
The message is not correct. It's empty virtue signaling. It's nonsense. This comes from a country with a history which I don't blame on the current Germans, but a history that's very checkered. Now, let me give you a contrast here. So I went to the Sevens World Cup in Cape Town. You know that because I saw you in Gauteng, and thanks for coming to the meet. That was an awesome meet and greet, wasn't it? That was a lot of fun. Yeah,
that was lovely. The food was great. You were great. Everyone was just fantastic.
Just amazing. It was just a lot of music. We could have turned the music down, but other than that, it was pretty great. But yeah, there's the old fogey coming in there. Turn the music down. Oh, it's too loud. Anyway, my hearing aid is not working right. Anyway, no, but so it was. That was great. But I was at Cape Town 7th of September, and then I was supposed to go to New Zealand in October. I had tickets for the Women's World Cup, and then I went to the Rugby League. Now, the Rugby League World Cup and the Women's World Cup were pushed forward to this year because of political cowardice. But anyway, so I didn't go to New Zealand because I was still in South Africa when they finally lifted their ridiculous travel restrictions, and it was too late to get a reasonably priced ticket. They wanted like $4,000 for an economy flight. I'm not paying that to go to New Zealand, so I didn't go. And it's probably a good thing I didn't, because I'd probably be sitting in a New Zealand jail or be deported as undesirable immigrant now, or traveler, because at the women's game, the U.S. I had tickets for, the athletes took a knee Now, let me put the
Oh.
optic in perspective for you. They're in New Zealand, okay, which has a history supposedly of white oppression of the Maori. Of course, the Maori oppressed the environment and wiped out all the native flora and fauna before Europeans arrived, but let's not talk about that. And they also wiped each other out. But then, so it's a long history of supposed racism there. So let's not talk about New Zealand's history of racism. Let's talk about America, where this racism doesn't exist in the fashion they claim it does. And they're all going to take a knee against racism. And they're playing Japan, a country that raped, pillaged, murdered, slaughtered, and enslaved and turned sexual slaves out of Korean women, not to mention what they did to all of Asia, the rape of Nanking, bayoneting pregnant women, killing infants, burning people, dismembering them. That's what the Japanese did just a few decades ago. Those women of color, which Japanese are, didn't take a knee for their country's sins. Why are these moron, white, privileged, paid elite athletes who make money working in the UK playing rugby taking a knee, insulting my country? I mean, the optic is just stupid for anybody that's even remotely informed.
Agreed. And I'm glad you pointed out the sins of other countries as well, which sound worse than what the people with white guilt have, to be honest.
Exactly.
And why aren't they calling them out? And I think that's a good point to make. I think that each and every country has there's some part of their history that they're not proud of.
Sure,
but it just seems to me that if
let me just run through a couple really quickly. The Chinese Cultural Revolution, 30 million Chinese murdered by the communists, not a century ago, just a few decades ago. There's one.
Right.
What about the Anglos wiping out the Maori in New Zealand? What about the Australians wiping out the Aborigines in Australia, hunting them like animals? That actually happened in the 19th century. What about the Mfecane and the wiping out of hundreds of thousands, if not as many as 1 million black South Africans? And what about the French and the attack on the Huguenots when the Edict of Nantes was lifted in 1680 and they just obliterated the Huguenots? One of the reasons why you have names like de Klerk and Du Toit in South Africa, because they fled from France. I mean, the list goes on and on of the atrocities committed by all countries at all times in all points of history. I mean, I could go to India, I could go to Nigeria, I could go to Cameroon. It doesn't matter. This collective, stupid responsibility, this guilt is from people who are, in my view, insecure in who they are and don't understand or don't care about history. I like blaming the West for slavery. We were late to the game in slavery. Slavery had been around since humankind came about. Now, the fact that it was industrialized just shows how industrious people in the West were. That makes it bad, but it doesn't make them unique. Give me a break.
Right. Agreed. Each and every country has a dark history. And now the next question is, do we expect each and every country to practice self-flagellation in recognition of the sins that their forefathers committed? Of course not. So I think really this virtue signaling, it's getting old. And another thing is that people are going to get tired of it. And on top of that, when people talk about it, they're not going to show as much interest as they would, as they should, because the soccer players and the people on the left have just made this topic so unenjoyable and unworthy of discussion due to their virtue signaling. So they're actually doing more injustice to the past by actually virtue signaling, which is sad.
Absolutely. It's just like tearing down statues. So, it's stupid and rewriting history. I mean, did you see what they did here in the States? An LGTB-sponsored legal group called Lambda Association or something like that sought to have NASA change the name of the James Webb Space Telescope. Now, James Webb, but you probably heard the telescope, he was the second administrator of NASA after the Nazi who came over and took over first. But Werner von Braun was our first NASA administrator. I don't know if you know that. Yeah, Werner
I
von
didn't
Braun.
know that.
Yeah, the inventor of the rocket. He was the NASA administrator. Second guy was James Webb, and he was there during the Apollo program development. Now, he was there for like the first mission, I think, and then he left. But the Apollo program was shepherded and brought in the end of the Mercury program by James Webb. Well, because the U.S. government discriminated against homosexuals, and they did openly, every government did around the world, they choose to take today's standards and apply it to that time. Garden State Gardener, thank you for becoming a member. Let me give you a quick salute real quick, and I'll finish the story. All right, cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, so appreciate it. Memberships are hard to come by these days. So are super chats, but thank goodness I'm not surviving off super chats. I'd be on the street corner selling something, and it wouldn't be my beard anyway. But and it wouldn't be a white substance in a pill anyway. But seriously, yeah. So James Webb, they tried to say he was a homophobe and discriminate against homosexuals. And they went to NASA. Now, NASA is a very woke organization. Trust me, just watch one of their broadcasts. They do everything they can to hide all the white Christian males that work there, except for the old guys who run the place. You ever go to the control room, you see a bunch of white guys running everything, and then all they put on the screen are women, and homosexuals, and people of color. They're very woke. But to their credit, they didn't disgrace James Webb's memory by falling for this nonsense. They said there's no evidence. They did an investigation. There's no evidence that he discriminated, that he, and see, this is what they try to do. They try to rewrite history and damage someone's reputation. Now they're trying to make claims about Lincoln. Lincoln fought to end slavery. People seem to forget, look, I'm not shilling for the Republican Party. It's a party I have no great affinity for, even though I'm registered to vote in that party. The Republican Party only existed for one reason, Dumo. Not for national security, not for economic prosperity, not for westward expansion, not for immigration, anti-immigration. It was created by abolitionists to end the abomination of slavery. And in 3 years, became the governing party in this country. That's how quickly a movement can form. The Republican Party was founded in the 1850s, and 3 years later, its first candidate ever was elected to office as President Abraham Lincoln. People seem to forget that. That's why the Republican Party exists, to end slavery, bigotry, and racism. And yet they call Republicans racist all the time with no evidence. It's crazy.
Right. And credit to NASA as well for not changing the name of that telescope.
Well, to be fair, I think it would have been cost prohibitive to send a team out to 1.5 million miles away from the Earth, out there in the middle of the solar system, and etch a new label on top of the satellite, the telescope. Yeah, just saying, it might have been pretty expensive to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe that's the reason. They're like, look, man,
we hear you,
but
this.
Exactly.
Well, there goes my pension, man. Forget this idea. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Anyway, Hey, did you see? Okay, we've had some fun. Okay, let's not stop with FIFA. Just one more thing on it. It's not just Germans, by the way. It started with the English and their little armbands. We are one.
Yeah.
Yeah. They started it all, and then the Germans jumped on, the Americans too. So this has really irritated me, because the American soccer team took the USA soccer or football logo and they put rainbow-colored stripes instead of red, white, and blue. Mm-hmm. To which I see on Twitter, oh, look how inclusive we are. How is disenfranchising 95% of your population by representing just one segment of it, which was 5% or less, bringing people in? How is that right in bringing people in? So here's what I said. That is an exclusionary symbol. The symbol that represents everyone is the one that was there. Red, white, and blue represents all Americans. It doesn't differentiate whether you're gay, straight, bi, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Cameroonian, Serbian, Viking. It doesn't differentiate. Red, white, blue, and the stars and the stripes on that flag represent all 330 million Americans. It's as simple as that. Simple as that. Anyway, so yeah, now let's shift. I did see this thing. Now I tried to read it in the UK paper, but it was behind a paywall, so I had to rely on the South African one. But did you see what this UK columnist said about Cyril's visit? He called him a dreadful fellow.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Okay, I heard he was in the UK. I didn't hear about this column.
Oh yeah.
So why did they say he was dreadful?
Well, let me read a little bit of it from here. So, President Ramaphosa has been labeled a dreadful fellow by UK-based Sunday Times newspaper, where he was described as a man who prefers folded stuff over checkbooks. In the article titled, "He Must Be Special, the Tea Trolley's Out." Ooh, that's pretty mean. Political sketch writer Quentin Letts delved into the pomp and ceremony marking Ramaphosa's visit to the UK at the invitation of King Charles. Anyway, it goes on and on. He's saying that, the guy just came there to beg for money, which he did. And he demanded reparations. So look, here's something before you respond to that, and you can respond to both these things. President Biden has promised reparations to South Africa and others for our climate damage, to which I say I want reparations from the world for U.S., which developed electricity, incandescent light bulbs, LEDs, computers, rail cars, modern railroads, aviation, space travel, advanced medicine. Shall I continue? Yes, we polluted the world over 200 years during the Industrial Revolution, but we made your lives possible today. So how about paying it back for all the development that we went through and all the damage we did to our territory and all the sacrifice we made? It's just a ludicrous argument, but you get my point.
I get it, yeah. I mean, going on the Ramaphosa one, not surprised. I think
dreadful fellow.
I think that's what the ANC is known for now. I think that when it comes to African countries, they're very quick to play the victim card when it comes to Europeans. Mugabe did that, was a pro at doing that. Now Ramaphosa's doing that. I mean, in England, for crying out loud, you know, I think for me, this just shows how weak he is, really. I mean, I think we have a tendency in South Africa and in Africa in general to elect weak leaders. So when I say weak leaders, whenever the West is involved, it's either we're very submissive, and if we're not submissive and we try to go up against them, it'll always be about slavery, reparations and stuff. But it's not anything serious. Like, for example, look what happened during the pandemic. Everyone was locking down their countries. And what did South Africa say? Oh, we're going to do the same thing because the rest of the world is doing it. So when the rest of the world suits them, you know, they'll do it. When it doesn't suit them, reparations and so forth, you know. So I think for me, Ramaphosa, I mean, I'm not surprised that he's done something of this nature. I really have stopped following what he says. I know he releases this newsletter every week. I just stopped. It's ridiculous. And then now on the question of reparations, I think going to the Biden issue, I mean, really, is he really going to say that we should pay reparations for the climate change and the climate damage? That's just virtue signaling. I think now, I mean, just looking at Biden and what's happening in the United States, I mean, there's actually an anticipation that there might be a recession now that the Federal Reserve... No,
we're in a recession. They just redefined the terms. The recession has been historically defined over the past 5 decades by economists as 2 consecutive quarters of zero or negative growth. We achieved that earlier this year. We've been in a recession for 9 months. This government just lies, and the press just covers up for them. It's just disgrace. Anyway. It's a recession with runaway inflation. That's double whammy.
Exactly. And Biden measures inflations using a ruler, I guess, because he said it went up by an inch. And I mean, and this is this is really...
Couldn't he use metrics?
Exactly.
3 centimeters.
And I just feel, in my opinion, like, I just feel that the media is not being honest on Biden. Yeah. Because I mean, if this was under the Trump administration,
oh dear God,
you don't have to be a Republican to admit this. We all know that even if there was a recession for 1 quarter or 1 month or for 1 day, we'll never hear the end of it.
We'd be hearing about it 20 years later. I mean, listen,
exactly.
Barack Obama still says it's George Bush's fault that his presidency was such a mess.
So yeah, exactly. I just think this now, with regards to to Biden and the virtue signaling, it just seems that now, like, that's what they do now. They just mess everything up and they say, "Oh, at least we're not homophobes," or "Oh, you know, at least we're not racist."
Well, thank God for that.
You know, look at our flag for the World Cup. You know, it's rainbows. I mean, yes, you're paying more for stuff, but hey, who cares? We're not racist. We're loving people. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like not to say that you should be racist and have a good economy, but yes, we get it. You shouldn't be racist, but guys, let's do the basics first. You know, like, let's get people jobs and everything like that. You know.
Well, he said here that Lord Hoyle, we have. Well, Sean, thank you for subscribing. Appreciate that. Wow, we got a subscriber. That's a rare event these days. Thank you for that. By the way, folks, for those who don't know this, I appeared on Caravan to Midnight last night with John B. Wells, nationwide coast-to-coast broadcast with about 6 million listeners, and it brought me 0 subscribers. Must have been a bad performance. No, they don't bother to mention my channel on there. They just put my Facebook, which really isn't helpful, and my Twitter. But anyway, so what he said is that Lord Hoyle, who gave a speech ahead of him, Lord Hoyle said, oh, hang on, something just a second there. Just let me check on something real quick. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, Dumo's got to step away for a second there. Yeah, so well, there's no point in me reading that if Dumo's stepping away for a second because it was for his edification. So, yeah, just to let you guys know, I was on Caravan to Midnight last night with John B. Wells. He's back. Apparently, Dumo has chased away the home invaders. That was pretty fast. Well, it is South Africa, man. You know, listen, I got a friend who helps me get rugby connections. I hadn't heard from him in a couple weeks. I was in the UK, and I noticed he didn't show up on my rugby broadcast. He always does, and I got kind of concerned. I sent him a message. Hey, are you okay? You still out there? And I didn't get a response for a couple of days. I didn't get a response. I'm like, did somebody steal your phone? Because, you know, sometimes people steal a phone. They hang on to it and use it. Anyway, so the same SIM card, I mean. But anyway, so he was fine. But, speaking of which, before I get back to that other story, when I was in South Africa and I went up to Uppington, they gave me a satchel, a leather satchel made out of South African rawhide that was, you know, seared into it, Colonel Wyatt, and my visit up there commemorating it with bottles of wine and a brandy in there. And I wanted to share that when I visited Steve Hofmeyer because he likes that brandy, and I had the bottle. I thought I'd share it with him because I can't carry it back States. So I took it to Steve's house, and then in the hubbub of leaving that evening, I left it behind. My friend who knows Steve, who was there at the braai with us, I stayed at his house overnight that night, and he promised to get it. He got it, and I can never recover it my trip. Anyway, long story short, his home was invaded, and they took everything, including my wine. They took my wine in Centurion. Guess what?
Wow.
They got away from the house some distance. I guess maybe where they were putting all the stuff in the bushes or on cars or wherever they're getting rid of their trucks or Bucky's, whatever. And they must have looked at it, and it said Colonel, and I think it also said Sightlanders on there, and they probably wet their nappies and left it on the ground. My wine and my satchel have been recovered and are in safe hands, despite my friend having been robbed of his entire household. Wow. Yeah,
that's interesting.
That is South Africa, man. So I guess it's destined that I'm going to get that satchel home at some point because it's still there in one piece. Anyway, back to what they said about the dreadful fellow. Let me read this comment. So Lord Hoyle, who spoke before Cyril did, Lord Hoyle delivered a tidy speech about Nelson Mandela. Ramaphosa sat there expressionless. He possibly longs for the day when someone makes a speech about him. Yeah, that's not coming, brother. His own speech, not short, was light on diplomatic anecdotes and historical perspective normal at these events. Instead, he banged on about poverty, diseased water, power cuts, and how to transfer substantial resources from rich countries, i.e. us, to low, medium-income countries, i.e. him. Anyway, he said, let's end the article with unflattering whisperings. His colleague picked up the event. His journalist had to be present an hour before Ramaphosa was introduced. He said basically that Ramaphosa misread the room. And that sounds like Cyril. He misreads every room. The guy is just comical. I mean, when people were jeering him at ANC events, he's like, thank you, I know, thank you. It's like he has cognitive dissonance.
Agreed. It reminds me of that, I think it was a Workers' Day. Was it a Workers' Day rally? If I'm not mistaken. And he was in a stadium, and then these guys were just jeering him like there's no tomorrow. And he's like, no, we hear you. You want these grants? We're going to give you that. I just think he's that guy that's trying to be everything to everyone. And it's just not working. I just think people are just have grown tired of it now. I mean, I don't know. He's just, for me, he's just that guy that, like, it's almost like, yeah, it's Cyril. Like, nothing special about him, you know, nothing bad about him, nothing good about him. That's just him. And I've just grown tired of it as well. It's just,
he's not even bad. He's not even entertaining anymore. At least the beginning of the pandemic lockdown, he was entertaining. You must wear your musk. Okay, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. But so speaking of presidents and former presidents of South Africa, look, I was shocked to discover that Arthur Fraser's medical parole of Jacob Zuma was unconstitutional. Who would have ever thought that? Did you hear this? Apparently, it wasn't legitimate. By the way, they've opened investigation into Arthur Fraser now. They're coming after him for the parole.
Wow. And I think this probably is linked to the whole Phala thing, in my opinion.
Oh, it's a distraction. Yeah.
And what I found to be very interesting with that judgment is that they said, yes, Zuma's parole thing was illegitimate, but the correctional services, so they put the decision of putting Zuma back in jail in the hands of the correctional services, the very guys who said that he must be out anyway. And I was like, that is a very interesting thing.
Also, the people who cheekily said he completed his sentence when they knew that there had been an appeal since December of last year when the clock should have stopped.
Exactly. Exactly. So this is going to be a very interesting thing, because if Zuma goes back to jail, are we going to see that same violence that we saw in July last year? Was it this year? It was last year.
It was last year, July 9th, 2021. I'll never forget it. Because July 4th, John, let me run the sequence again real quick. June 29th, Constitutional Court declares he's in contempt of court. He has until midnight on the 4th of July to turn himself in to authorities at the correctional facility. It wasn't originally Escort, but they Gucci'd him up to a better facility, the newer prison at Escort. So on the 4th of July, he didn't do that. Part of the court order was that Bekachile and Sitole, the commissioner of police, had 4 days after that until the 8th to take him into custody and deliver him to that, or they were in contempt of court, which, by the way, they've never been charged with contempt of court. They never took him to the facility. He sat like a king holding court at Nkonla until 23:18 on the night of the 8th, and then he left and drove to Escort with a big convoy of people, arriving at about 2:30 in the morning, violating his report date by 4 days and violating Bekachile and Sitole's responsibility by a few hours. So they were also in contempt of court. So that's it. And that was the 9th it started, and they went to the Mui River Plaza, and they torched 100 vehicles, all owned by black South Africans, and then it all went from there. You know, the sabotage of crematoriums, water treatment facilities, radio stations, sabotage and shut down, and then all the looting. Yeah, ammunition taken from a ship that wasn't even supposed to be in Durban, bound for Cape Town. All kinds of fishy things going on there. But hey, you know, just another day in South Africa.
Yeah. And now that's really, you know, the sad thing about it. And I just think a lot of people are going to treat this like a grenade, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or no, let me not say grenade, hot potato. Rather.
Hot potato, yeah. That's a better description.
Because a grenade's going to explode at some point. But
hot potato, people are just going to keep getting rid of it. That's what you want to say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, it's your job. No, it's not my job. He's responsible. I'm not responsible.
Yeah. So I think that's what's going to happen ultimately. It's just going to be treated like a hot potato, and hopefully it just dies out at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you look, I've come to the conclusion that it seems that no matter what happens, Zuma is not going to spend a substantial time in jail.
No.
He won't. People don't want to entertain that, and they'll kick the can down the road as much as they can.
Frankly, I got to be honest with you, I'm even losing interest in him ever seeing him going to jail again.
Yeah.
Not because I'm worried about public safety, but just because, like, whatever. You know, I'd much rather see Ace Magashule, Zandile Gumeda, Cyril Ramaphosa, not Tokyo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to speak that he's not part of the conversation. The name just popped in my head. That was unfair to Tokyo. No, I'm trying, it's William Kesey. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, I'd much rather see these people go through a trial process for the charges against them or the charges that should be put against them and see those things actually taken to full prosecution. If they're innocent, they're innocent. But everyone I mentioned, I'm pretty sure is guilty of the things they've been charged with or accused of. Yeah, that's what I'd much rather see because they are the ones. Zuma's not in a position, other than his influence, he's not in a position to control anything right now. He can influence events, but it's you can negate influence with good leadership that does their job, which the ANC doesn't have right now.
Right, exactly. And I think they're just protecting their own at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And even that whole thing with Arthur Fraser as well, it'll be interesting to see how that develops since he's the one that reported on the Phala incident.
Yeah, so funny that. Now there's an investigation into him.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. I'm keen to see how these guys are going to react. But yeah, look, I mean, and there's also that conference that's in December as well, elective conference that's coming up. So I think what probably Arthur Fraser was hoping for was that things were going to heat up quite a bit, so much so that by the time the conference occurs, Ramaphosa probably would be guaranteed to lose. But it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like that so far. We don't know. I mean, there's still a lot of politics that needs to occur before that happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's, I don't want to say it's a done deal, but it looks like despite all the efforts of the radical economic transformation faction within the ANC, that Ramaphosa is going to cruise to a victory here in the party conference in December. That's what I think. The other options are not attractive. Jacob Zuma, Zweli Mkhize, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Come on. These are all losers. I mean, there's no talent there whatsoever. The ANC used to have talent. Trevor Manuel, talented. Barbara Hogan, annoying but talented. Excuse me. Plenty of people who had talent, but it's all gone. Thabo Mbeki, while I find him be annoying and have the fragile ego of a 6-year-old who just had his lollipop taken from him, he was talented. I just couldn't stand the guy because he's a twit, but he was talented. But the ANC is either they've run off and hid, or they've taken their money, or they've taken their chips out of the game. I don't know, but who do you turn to? I mean, I don't see anyone in the ANC who shows any gravitas whatsoever. Anybody. I mean, come on, please, somebody. Show me an ANC politician worth your time and my time. Now, we can say that the same thing about a number of people in other parties too, but certainly in the ANC, they're the ones running things, so that's where you need the leadership.
Agreed. There probably isn't anyone. Yeah. And I think what has happened now is that the leadership in the ANC has become like it's become like, I don't know, I mean, like musical chairs, if you want to put it that way. But in this game of musical chairs, it's not that it's not that the amount of chairs decrease. The participants get replaced rather. So what happens now in this incident is that you've got people can see that, okay, when it's my time to become the president, then I'm going to feed my friends. And then when that time is over, then the next set of people come in, And I think people are starting to catch that pattern. And I think if you look, let's say under the Zuma administration, Zuma helped his friends. A lot of people became rich because of him and so forth. And the same thing's happening under Ramaphosa. Then once Ramaphosa's time is gone, then it's going to be the next guy and the next guy. So they kind of know that, and they're playing that game. That's what I think. So yeah, that's why I think that whole step aside rule is nonsense.
Yeah.
It was never going to be implemented. That's all for PR, and the media just sucks it up. Like, yes, step aside is so good, but people need to step aside now. Like, hello, they're not going to step aside. They all know the game, they all know the rules, and that's just a PR stunt.
Well, I mean, look, Melanie Verwoerd puts out an op-ed when Ramaphosa's Phala scandal gets exposed. A2, Cyril? No, you can't be guilty. And she meant it. Like, are you high? Are you serious? I mean, this guy, well, he's a business, Ramaphosa, I never fell for that. And I pointed out, I was still serving active duty. I'm like, you people are crazy. You realize this guy was handed over $400 million US in wealth given to him.
Wow.
He didn't earn that. Wow. He was given shares in this, given shares. He didn't take anything and turn into anything. I mean, it's like, the kid who went down here, I got these magic beans. He didn't get magic beans to grow the beanstalk, like Jack. The guy, if you give me $350 million in 1994, I'm going to tell you something, Dumo, it'd be worth $15 billion today. And even if I was a bad investor, it'd be worth $1.5 billion by just putting it in a bank. You can earn that kind of money. The guy has the same amount of wealth, essentially just a little bit more than he had in 1994, which tells you an awful lot about how inept he is and how things were just handed to him. And that's the problem, because mediocrity has become the norm. Not even mediocrity, sub-mediocrity is what's going on in South Africa. I mean, 2 subjects, and I love how people try to correct me this all the time, but they're wrong. Go to the Department of Education and look up, now there's multiple departments, but go to the one that covers higher education and look what the matrix standards are. 2 subjects, 30%, and 40% in your first language are considered passing marks to enter university. That's insane. Who gives somebody, and think about this. We'd like you to build that bridge. What did you get in maths? 38%. All right. Ooh, thank you. So that bridge is going to be real safe now, isn't it? No, it's not. And I'm not going to drive on it. Good Lord. Welcome. I'm your surgeon. So how'd you do in school? Oh, in biology, I got 37. Okay. This is a finger and a digit. Come here.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing. I think I have to correct you on this one.
Okay, go ahead.
I think the matric marks, as you mentioned, or the standards to pass matric is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
But to enter university, no.
I was being facetious about entering. It is it is the pass the matric. But in order to enter university, you have to pass matric, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Well, I mean, the sense of what I'm saying is accurate, but yeah, you are correct and correct me at that. But I that's my embellishment. We're all entitled to a little bit of embellishment.
Fair enough. And so I think you'd never mind these guys going to university. Will they even get a job with those type of marks? They won't.
In doing what? I mean, in the bureaucracy, and that's why it doesn't work.
Exactly. I mean, I know that there was this one incident on Twitter where this guy, he broke up with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend got really angry with him, and she posted his matric certificate.
Oh,
my word.
She
My
doxed him.
word. I've never seen such marks, but he passed. And I'm like, how does this guy even get a job? And that's what I'm trying to get at you, is that even if you want to work, and again, I'm not trying to make other jobs seem less valuable than the others.
No. Yeah, but there are certain qualifications and standards to do certain things.
Exactly.
If you're going to do brain surgery, you've got to have better skills and more specific skills than running a restaurant.
Right. And let's say you're a waiter, for example.
Yeah.
You need to know how to read and you need to know how to write.
You need to know how to count too.
Exactly, count and read numbers. You need to know how to do that. Now you got like 35% for mathematics, and now you're supposed to sum up all. Let's say there's a bill that comes through. You need to sum up all of that, and you need to make sure that it's actually reflecting correctly. I'm sorry, but they won't hire you if you got like 30%. I mean, unless they're really desperate, but they won't make you manage the tills. They'll make you do something else. But that's the reality. Like, I mean, they just really, I think for me, right? This is what I think. Yeah. This is why I think the matric marks are low. Mm-hmm. I think they're doing so purposefully so that people actually can become welfare recipients. They can create a need, an artificial need for welfare recipients.
They want people unemployed.
Yeah, they want people unemployed. Not only do they want them unemployed, they want them to be unemployable.
They're dependent on the state.
Exactly, and therefore that's why you see calls for a 350 rand grant now, because look at all these unemployed people. Yeah. They can't get jobs.
But that's ridiculous. That's $23 US. I mean, you can't even buy a bag of rice for that. It's ridiculous. But no, we're 100% in violent agreement on that. That's an argument I've been making for some time. This is intentional. The dumbing down of South African society is intentional. And the same thing in America. I mean, look at Americans, these things where they do on camera, who's the vice president? Hillary Clinton. They aren't cherry picking. They don't go, okay, take the smart ones out, only show the idiots. Most of them are idiots. I mean, it's just the bottom line. And then these people have the vote. That's what's scary. Look, I want to go to the restaurant in South Africa where the waiter has bad math skills and the bill is 89 Rand. I give him 100 note and he gives me 111 Rand back. That's where I want to go.
Whoa. Yeah, exactly.
So let me know. Let me know which waiters those are. If it's Zimbabwean, I'm screwed. He's going to know exactly what the bill is and do it correctly.
That is so true. And I mean, and very interesting enough, I mean, in the restaurants, I've noticed that a lot of the waiters there are from Zimbabwe.
Yeah,
right.
And guess why? You notice because they're probably polite, they're friendly, they're prompt, and they get the job done accurately because they want the job and they have good manners and good skills.
Yeah, and I mean, I had a former friend who was from Zimbabwe.
Yeah,
and I got to say that guy was incredibly smart.
Yeah,
I mean, he did well. The education system was like A levels. He was smart but very lazy. And I remember what he would do, right?
Yeah,
when he would impress people, he would tell them, "I can multiply double-digit numbers," right? And he'd say, "Give me any multiplication with double digit," and he would get it right. And he would work it out like within 30 seconds. Yep. It was incredible. I was like, how do you do this?
But ask him to pick up his room.
He won't be able to do it. I was like, man, but he was incredible. Like when it came to mathematics, just he could do mathematics better than the average, let me not say average South African, like top tier South Africans. And he was so lazy. But anyway, that's the thing about the Zimbabwean education system. Props for producing people like him.
That's the one thing we have to give credit to ZANU PF and ZANU PF and Mugabe. They did fix the education system for a period of time, although it's fallen on hard times the past decade or so. But yeah, they did a great job in that. Unfortunately, they just reprobates and were thieves and ran the country in the ground. Hey, listen, let me ask you this question, because I know you pay a little attention to the States. You probably noticed the red trickle or dribble that took place, not the red tsunami that took place. So if I were to ask you who won the elections, what would you say? Because, I mean, you can't, who won? It's every member of Congress. But generally speaking, which party won the elections? How would you answer that?
I would say it's the Democrats, because they did far better than expected. I think everyone was expecting this red wave. I wasn't, to be honest. I wasn't.
Well, you were right. You were right.
I felt that You know, and okay, so I'll
Okay.
just go through them orderly, right?
Sure.
So the first point is, because I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Go ahead.
So the first point is that I felt that after Biden got elected, I think people dug in their heels, and I think they felt that, look, you know, we can't have anything worse. We can't have anything worse. Biden is our guy. We're going to stick behind him. And then now people said, well, the Republicans had bad candidates. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I do not think so. I think the Republicans had decent candidates, right? And people said, oh, the Republicans' candidates were so bad that even Fetterman won. And I'm like, no, it's not that. Fetterman sucked. Everybody knows Fetterman sucks. Even Fetterman knows that he sucks. I mean, even with his campaign and some of his interviews that he did, like, he had to read the stuff because he couldn't process speech properly and stuff like that because of his stroke. So he knew he was on the back foot. I think people in the United States, they just dug in their heels and they said, you know what? We are voting blue. The party, what is it? Democrats is the party of well, that's what they think. They think it's the party of freedom and stuff like that. We're digging in. We don't care if they put the devil there. We are voting blue. That is what happened. The same thing happened in South Africa. Look at Zuma when he won the election. He was going up against Helen Zille. Helen Zille, people may say, was not the best of candidates, was far better than Zuma, but still lost. So I don't buy that story that the Republicans had bad candidates. I think people just dug in their heels, and we just saw the effects of that. That's what I felt. And also, I mean, look, not the Democrats, the Republicans took over the House. Great, they got a new speaker, but in the Senate, it looks like it's still in favor of the Democrats.
No, we'll do be in favor of the Democrats, but it might be just outright. Right now, it's a question whether it's split by the vice president's vote, because the Walker race and Warnock race in Georgia is still to be decided. Yeah, no, you're spot on.
Even now, I thought that thing was decided.
No, December 6th, it's a runoff. Georgia's one of those weird states because states set the election law. In most states, it doesn't matter. First past the post. I mean, if I ran in Pennsylvania, I got 41% of the vote for Senate, and I was the top vote getter, I go to the Senate. In Georgia, I have to run again the top two candidates, like the European system, and then you have to have 50 plus one, but not in most states. That's rare. But states are allowed to set their election laws, and that's how Georgia does it, and that's how the Democrats got control of the Senate this election cycle to begin with, because those two seats were both Republican, and both were flipped in the last election to Democrats, and it went from 52 to 50 because of those losses. And I blame Donald Trump for that, because instead of focusing on using his gravitas to get people to vote for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler in Georgia, he went to Georgia 6 times from the election until January. It was January 5th that election took place. And he went down there to Georgia, and he bellyached about what happened to him instead of pushing the candidates. No. And it cost us the Senate. And now we see the carnage that's happened in America as a consequence of it. And, you know, so I'm one of those people that's very angry at Donald Trump for that. And I said so at the time. But anyway, yeah, so you're right. The Democrats won. But now this isn't germane, but this is a topic the left always brings up. And the Democrats, when they try to get rid of the Electoral College in the presidential race, well, we win more votes. We win more votes. And now the reason I bring this up, that's why I asked the whole question, Dumo, is that the narrative is that Republicans are unpopular, that they can't get voters. It's a dying party. Who got more votes in the aggregate in this election, Republicans or Democrats?
It was Democrats, right?
Nope. The Republicans got 3 million more votes, 3 million more votes than Democratic candidates. But that doesn't matter because, you know, you've got to get them in the right place at the right time. And so
now they're going to be voting for, now they're going to be saying that, no, we need Electoral College.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is that, you know, it's a silly argument, but the point is that, but the reason I do it is to refute the narrative that's running. The Republicans are dying, that there's no, the people don't support Republican ideas. They got 3 million more votes for Republican candidates across. By the way, Doug Mastriano, who lost significantly here in Pennsylvania as a governor, got more votes as Republican candidate for governor than any Republican in history. And this state has had a history of Republican governors. No one's ever got the number of votes he got as a Republican candidate. Of course, no one's ever got the number of votes that his opponent got, Josh Shapiro. But that's, you know, but the point is that it wasn't that people didn't vote for him. It's that the other guy got more votes. You know, it's but no. So I mean, I think that's important to point out. Now, here, let me tell you one thing that really did surprise me a little bit. When the Dobbs decision came up, that was the revoking the Roe versus Wade decision, which is unconstitutional, but was the law of the land for 50 years. When that decision came up a few months ago, the Democrats seized on it, ran around and said, the end of gay marriage, the end of interracial marriage, the end of contraception. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Ah! And they terrified people. And they said, this is how we're going to win the election. Guess what? They may have been right, because the number one issue in the exit polls across the country for voters, Democrat and Republican, was inflation. Republicans won on that issue. But the next issue they pushed was crime, which was only about the fifth most important issue for most voters. Number two for Democratic voters was the Dobbs decision. 43% of voters said that was the most influential reason they voted for a Democrat, was because they were concerned about the loss of abortion rights.
Wow.
And the Republicans completely missed that. And the press downplayed it, and I think they knew they were downplaying it and let us all be deceived in thinking it wasn't that big an issue. While the Democratic Party kept saying it was a big issue, the press were like, no, not really. People aren't talking about it. It's not coming up in polls. Well, somebody lied to somebody.
That is very revealing. That's very revealing, in my opinion. And I think maybe that could have been I wouldn't say the straw that breaks the camel's back, but that could have been the deciding factor.
Yeah, it was the deciding factor in a number of close races, and it cost Republican candidates, and it cost people because of dark money. So here in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro spent something like $55 million to become governor. He's already the attorney general, so he's well known. His opponent, Doug Mastriano, spent like $3 million on his campaign, a grassroots campaign, and he won significantly. But his campaign ads all ran articles lying about Mastriano's position. And the same thing happened in New Hampshire, where General Don Bolduc ran for Senate against Maggie Hassan. She didn't even campaign in the States in the last week, and then she brought in all the big heavy hitters. Pocahontas came up there, Elizabeth Warren, and I think she even had Obama. A bunch of people came up there to campaign for her in the last couple of days. She ran ads against Don Bolduc saying that he was going to end abortion. And they did the same thing against Mehmet Oz here in Pennsylvania so that Fetterman get elected. But they have no control over abortion. They're senators. Exactly. Abortion is decided by the states, as the Supreme Court just made clear. So a U.S. senator going to Washington has no impact. The governor of Pennsylvania doesn't determine whether it is abortion legal in Pennsylvania, which, by the way, it is. It's the legislature which sends the bill to the governor. So these were all lies, and people fell for it. They scared people. I mean, listen, here's my view. If you're scared you're going to lose the right to terminate someone else's life, there's something morally wrong with you. That's just my position. But those people were scared, and then they voted, and that, I think, is going to prove to be the distance. There's a question here real quick I need to answer. How did Palin and another Republican run in the same race and collectively lose against a Democrat while getting more combined votes but split? Aha! Welcome to the strange world of American politics. The federal government doesn't run elections. States run elections, and they set their own election laws. That's how it works. Alaska has an open primary because they have one state representative, because it's a tiny state. California has like 38 or 40 or something like that, 40 some representatives in Congress. Alaska has one. You're guaranteed one, and they have one because their population is so small. So there's two senators, which makes the senators, more numerous than the representative. Whereas here in Pennsylvania, we have two senators and 16 representatives. In Alaska, you have two senators and one representative. So it's an open primary so that all candidates can run, or an open election. So anybody can run in that. And that's why there were two Republicans running. And it was foolish because they split the vote and the seat went to a Democrat. And that's what happened.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, they both got, the two of them together got far more votes than the top vote getter. Only got like 30 some percent, and the Democrat wins by default. But you have to know each election state's laws and how things are done. You have to understand how primaries are won, how they select candidates in the early voting before you get the general election. All of that makes a difference. One of the women I interviewed at the CPAC convention, Danielle Neuschwanger, ran for the Constitutional Party out in Colorado for governor. She was originally going to run as a Republican, but she lost in the primary, so she started running for the Constitutional Party. She got 21,000 votes. But she can do that because that's how it works. Anyway, so yeah, that's why Sarah Palin and the other Republicans split the vote, and that seat went to the Democrats. There you go.
Jeez. Yep. How's that for shooting yourself in the foot? I mean,
well, Republicans are good at that, Dumo. They're very good at shooting themselves in the foot.
Wow. Yeah. So, okay. So that argument where it was that the Republicans put out bad candidates,
that's
I reject it.
I reject it.
But I'd rather say that the Republicans are to blame for some of the losses. Right. I think that strategically they could have planned things a bit better.
Yep.
And they could have prepared a bit better for this last election. And I would say they dropped the ball in some cases, especially in that one now. It was in Alaska, right?
Yep. Alaska.
Yeah, there we go.
Well,
so,
I mean, Dumo, I'm much more unforgiving. I would say the Republican leadership is entirely to blame for not having a red tsunami. I mean, this is like the DA screwing up 2019. How do you lose votes in that election? That doesn't make any sense. You should have gained. They should have had over 30% of the vote instead of dropping down to 21%. This is the same sort of situation. You will never find a more demented, inept, incompetent moron in the White House and unpopular. His ratings were down below 30% by the time we got the election. You will never find a more corrupt administration where you can point their errors, their failures. You will never find people more anxious about inflation and unemployment and all these issues and global conflicts. This was a perfect storm, and the Republicans squandered it. And in no small measure because of the people I call the uniparty establishment Republicans like Mitch McConnell and others and Susan Collins. They don't care about this country and about Americans. They care about themselves. Last night on Caravan at Midnight, I was asked by John B. Wells parallels between South Africa and America. I said, here's a very strong parallel. South Africa has the same problem America has. Most politicians are not there for the people. They're there for the party. And I made the case very clear in the example of South Africa because when the ANC took over the Western Cape, they deployed their cadres down there. So they sent Venda speakers and Zulu speakers and Tswana speakers down to the Western Cape who didn't speak Afrikaans, who didn't speak English particularly well and didn't know the area, didn't know Xhosa, and so they're there and they're ruling. And who are they ruling for? They're not ruling for the constituents who live I can't think of names right now. Place in the Western Cape, Stellenbosch, Stellenbosch and Paarl and Cape Town. They're not there for ththose people. They don't report to them. When you're angry about something that's not being done, they're not going to respond to you because they owe their fealty to Lutuli House. Because without Lutuli House, they don't have a position. They don't have blue light escorts. They don't have a salary. They don't have the press fawning on them. So they don't represent the people, and that's a fundamentally corrupt aspect of it. Now, that's not the situation in America, but we have a situation in America where these people go to Washington or they go to Harrisburg or Albany, the state capitals. They get there, and they love the press. They like the perks. They like the office supplies. They like the staff that works for them. They like being important, and they forget about the people they represent. And then they do what the party tells them because the party rewards them with chairmanship positions on important, powerful committees. So they get to look important. Idiots like Adam Schiff, who's the biggest scumbag in the country, or Eric Swalwell, who dates Chinese spies, and doesn't even lose his security clearance, So this is what happens. And there's the parallel. We have politicians who are there party over people. And that's what you have in South Africa. And you have some of that in the DA as well. It's not just the ANC that's guilty in EFF. Yeah. What do you think? You agree with that?
That is accurate, I would say. It's very accurate. And I just think that's a feature of democracy. I'm very skeptical about democracy. And I think that what you're pointing out now with party over people, I think that'll become the norm over time. Or if not, it probably is the norm.
Well, democracy is not a good system. What? Okay. Didn't you defend the Constitution? Now, I'm not Jeremy Nell here. Hang on. Let's not. This isn't germ warfare. I'm not going off the deep end. No, but to be fair, he just says that. But let me be clear. That's why I like our constitutional republic. Democracy is nothing more than mob rule.
Yeah.
50 plus 1 decides what they will subjugate the 49.92. That's not fair. That's not a fair system. Now, it's almost impossible to come up with a truly fair system, but you can come up with a more fair system. And when our system functions the way it was designed, without the corruption that's found its way into the system, it is a more fair system. Ronaldo Cruz doesn't like the fact that we have juries by our peers. He thinks that having learned judges is a better way to do it. Really? Judges who get bought off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I remember I had an argument about that, and I was also like, yeah, get a judge, and then someone said, but a judge can be bought, and I was like, yeah, actually right. Good point. Yep. And then I left it.
It's much more difficult to buy a jury. It's not that it's never been done, but a jury, especially for a capital offense, you have to have a unanimous guilty verdict to get a felony conviction. It's not like, now in a civil case it's different. If you're suing someone because their dog bit you or they stole your bucky or something like that, it's a civil case. There you just have to have a majority. But in a criminal case, you have to have them all. If there's any doubt, then you go free.
Wow. Okay.
And for those who criticize our system, which is worthy of criticism, it's not perfect, and we've certainly seen a lot of problems. OJ, the guy was clearly guilty. But even so, if you look at prosecutions, we at least prosecute far more criminals and imprison far more people who commit violent crimes than it happens in South African context. And so when you compare the two systems, and I'm not trying to say ours is better than South Africa, I'm just trying to say that, give a few examples where people point things out. And Ronaldo said that. L5 says kicked out. No, is the chat still going for people? Has anyone else got the chat? People are still chatting here. Yeah, just refresh your page. Let me get this real quick here. John Jarvis made a comment. He said, let's hope the Republicans now see the value of early voting. No, I don't see the value of early voting. I think it's a scam. I think that people should vote on election day unless they're physically unable because they're not present, they're disabled, they're in a care facility. Then there's a mechanism that already exists for that. It's legitimate, one that attaches jeopardy. It's called federal absentee balloting. And you know why it attaches jeopardy? Because when you commit mail fraud, it's a felony. So putting a fake ballot or stealing someone's ballot and putting it in the mail puts you in risk of going to federal prison. That's why that system works. It isn't foolproof, but it works because only a few people would be stupid enough to take that risk. So I don't think early voting should be done. I think it destroys the value of the vote because people make decisions before they're fully informed. And John follows up my argument here with the next statement. Fetterman didn't have to have a debate until the last moment because at that stage he was largely already elected. I agree with John. There were hundreds of thousands of votes already in, which was the difference, and almost all of them went for Fetterman in the early voting. And this is why, not because Fetterman won, but why early voting is a disaster. How can you vote a month before an election? That's like you're running a poll online. That's just stupid. There's a reason for election day. There's a reason people in April 27th, 1994 stood in 14-hour queues to vote for the first time in South Africa because it's that important. Sadly, today we can't get half of South Africans to show up in a poll.
Yeah. And it looks like it might be even lower in 2024. I mean, the last one was less than 50%.
31% of the electorate.
That. Wow. Wow, that's pure apathy. That's like you can't. I mean, you can go lower than that, but I mean, from that point, it's just apathy. That's it. It's just apathy.
Well, I mean, I understand why a lot of people are frustrated, but that doesn't. It's not an excuse. I mean, you don't fix things if you don't get involved. I mean, come on. That's not cool. Hey, by the way, I don't know if you heard this, Dumo. Google and YouTube have put $13 million into a partnership with a network of global fact checkers. I'm so excited. They're going to make sure all our information is correct now.
Oh my goodness. Why do they put so much money into this nonsense? Like, I just don't understand why you need fact checkers, because you'll find that there are people who are going to do it regardless of the money. I mean, let's look at the pandemic. There was a lot of BS coming from official sources. Yeah. And yet there were people from unofficial sources calling out that BS. We don't need fact checkers. They're going to be there. There are people who are going to...
The world has 8 billion fact checkers.
Exactly. Yeah. People are more informed. They're closer to information. They're going to point out the BS. No need. This is money laundering. That's it. It's money laundering.
There was a time when we knew where to go for facts. The Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right.
Learned professors, instructors, teachers. We could trust them, but you can't anymore. And we don't really need the AP fact checking things. I find it comical. In fact, I was on Twitter and people were complaining about something. Said that Elon Musk posted an anti-Semitic tweet last night. That guy Moby left Twitter. I'm leaving Twitter because and he doesn't give a link. He doesn't even say what he did was anti-Semitic. So that's trustworthy? I mean, what is that?
As in Moby, the musical artist guy.
Yeah, he's got like 1 million followers on Twitter.
Wow. Does he still make music? I mean, the last song I heard that he made was like in 1999 or something.
I didn't know the guy was still alive. I thought it was a meme.
Look, I mean, Moby made some nice songs back in the day, like when I was still like 9-10 years old. That was it. But I mean, wow. I mean, he's got 1 million followers. I think they're bots. Like, I'm telling you, just ask like someone born, let's say 95. Who's Moby? If they know Moby. Like, no one knows Moby.
Is
like,
that a Herman Melville novel, Moby Dick?
Oh my goodness. No, man, I'm sorry. Moby's followers are bots. That's what I will say.
Yeah, I think so.
They're bots.
By the way, I don't know if you remember, but when Trump came in office a few years ago, he was focused on building the wall. And the fact checkers came out and talked about walls don't work. walls don't work. And I'm like, have you ever been to South Africa?
There's walls everywhere.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Great Wall of China? That failed. No, it didn't. It worked for 1,300 years. But when you stop maintaining it, eventually it's going to fail, you know? So they're like, walls don't work. Guess what? All these fact checkers, none of them are saying anything. Well, they also, when Hungary built a border fence to stop the invasion from people coming into this country, they were called racist because there was people from other parts of the world. Finland's building a wall on its border with Russia. Not one comment from the left about walls don't work.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing about the fact checkers. They're not fact checkers. They are
propagandists.
They are propagandists. That's it. Propagandists. Yep. I mean, and this is just another way to fund them. They need the money. Economy's looking bad. Hey, Google, you know, they're probably firing half their staff anyway because these tech companies are going through some rough times, but they still find money to give to propagandists. Very interesting times we're in.
No, it is fascinating. You see some other tech companies firing thousands of employees, and no one's freaking out about that. They're just upset
right.
that the censors at Twitter no longer have jobs. When they, you know, what's the phrase? One doth protest too much. I think that when they protest too much about this stuff, it clearly shows what they're terrified of. They are so afraid of genuine free speech, and everything it's coded in the typical terms, which have no meaning: anti-Semitic, racist. You know, when you call someone that all the time, it loses its currency. It's like when I was a kid, the F word was powerful. Now it's every third word out of some people's mouth. You know, that's all they say. It doesn't mean anything. You know, it's just. Anyway.
Yeah, no, agreed. It's lost its meaning. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So what's going on with Manpatria? You guys are like in the top ranked 100 or something like that for South African podcasts, aren't you?
Yeah, we did. We reached it. We stayed there for about a week or so, but it was just through a bit of like, how can I put it, releasing more content. So we know what we need to do to really get up there, which is great. Not to throw shade on YouTube, but at least the Apple algorithm is a bit more open, and it's not really based on how many listeners you have, but it's based on, you know, the guys that come on or listen to you, how long do they stay on there for? Yeah. You know, are they following you and stuff like that, which I think is great. It helps people that are at the bottom to rise to the top quickly. I mean, we're ranked 16th at some stage. That was the highest.
Wow.
So, you know, we'll try next year. We'll try to hit number 1. But yeah, I'm glad we reached that point. Yeah, just hard work pays off. Just gotta, you know, be focused. Yeah.
Excuse me.
No problem, Chris.
No, I wanted to say congratulations. I mean, it's awesome. Listen, I've given up all hope of being number 1 at anything anymore. With the shadow banning, you know, it's I don't even worry about that anymore. It's you know, it's a given. You know, the way that YouTube comes after me. I don't know if you know, since the last time we talked, just quickly to tell you what happened to me is that before the election, I was given a strike on a video that I did back in July with Jerome Davison, who's a black pastor, used to play for the Oakland Raiders. And he did a video, a satire of Democrats dressed in white robes with the Democratic symbol on here, kind of implying they're the Klan. And they're walking towards his house in broad daylight with nightsticks and baseball bats. And he's sitting in his kitchen going, when Democrats say they don't understand why people need a 30-round magazine. Anyway, so basically stands up in his kitchen holding an AR-15 up like this, doesn't point at anybody, and then they look in the window and they see them with the AR-15 and they drop their weapons and all run away. So anyway, so that was fine. His campaign has it. It's still on YouTube. He lost. He came in last place in the primary, so he didn't run the general election. But I did that in July because it was newsworthy. Interviewed him. I played the video so people would understand what it was about, and he explained why he did it. Yeah. And that's newsworthy. And then 3 weeks before the election, I got a strike, and they accused me of advocating violence. And I appealed it immediately. And within 24 hours, they restored my channel. And they put the video back up. But they kept the sanctions from the strike on there. So I wrote to them. I said, you rescinded the strike. Please take away the week ban and let me post. And they said, well, unfortunately, we've looked at your situation. We can't remove the strike. I said, unfortunately, you're not listening. You removed the strike. Here's the email. Exactly. Here is the screen capture. But the sanctions are still there. So that went for 9 days. Now, remember, the key part of this, YouTube restored the video. If I'd had a legitimate strike and they removed it, it would never be on the server again, correct?
Right. That's correct, yeah.
7 days later, when I was doing consulting at the War College, I went out during a break, and I could see that my channel was back after the 7 days were worn off. I just happened to check. So they hadn't resolved my question yet, but now the thing expired and I can broadcast. So I did a couple live streams. 9 hours later, I was issued another strike, a second strike, and a 2-week ban for the same video which YouTube put on my channel. So I appealed and I said, what is this? 2 days later, after that, they came back and said, well, listen, we can't rescind your strike. I'm like, what?
But you rescinded it.
Exactly. In the meantime, I appealed the second strike. Guess what? 2 days later, the second strike was removed and I was back on YouTube. But the sanctions remained from the first strike, which I never got.
Yeah.
These people are demonic. This is why I know that they're after me. I mean, look, I intentionally don't talk about the spicy cough. I don't refute the results of choosing events. None of that stuff. Yet they still come after me. I think this was a case of trolls who went to my video and falsely reported it. And they knew that YouTube put it back up because I mentioned it. And as soon as it went back up, by the way, it was for the same allegation. It wasn't like it was a different allegation. The exact same reason I got a strike. How can you give me a strike on a video you removed, you put back? Anyway, but that's YouTube. Anyway, that's just who they are. So I am doing other things. There might be some collaboration with Caravan to Midnight. They've offered to carry some of my streams, which is interesting. They have a huge audience, up to 6 million people. So I might consider that. I'll take a look at that. But anyway, yeah, but no, I just want to congratulate you guys because we haven't talked in a while, and that's awesome to see that you're doing well. And I hope that people keep listening to your program because I think it's an undervalued program. It doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Although maybe you feel like you're getting the attention, with all that, with that 16th place you once had there. But yikes! But you guys should have me on as a guest sometime.
Yeah, we in fact we are gonna make some changes for next year. So I think we want to bring on more guests. So definitely, Chris, we will definitely bring you on.
Cool beans.
I think it'll be very interesting. I just think because we'd be doing this for a while, so we know what works, what doesn't, and now we have to package it and just execute well. So I think that's what we need to do. But I'm glad that we failed a little bit here and there because you learn. When you fail, you learn. And and I'm not gonna quit just yet, guys. But I think next year we will see some decent progress. Yeah.
Well, listen, I understand where you're coming from. The experimentation, I've definitely made some mistakes and failed on my own too. I mean, I could put my Gucci on. I could wear my Louis Vuitton. I could wear nothing at all. Bet I made you look. No. Give me my morning hair. It's a mess. Even with my hoodie on. Oh, that song is just stuck in my head because that's the one that's all over TikTok. It's going everywhere now. I don't know if you've seen.
I see.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't.
Oh my gosh, that is the sensation now from what's her name there. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty funny. You don't know that song. I'll risk it won't be a copyright song. I only play for a couple seconds, but let me see. I probably got it queued up here. Hang on. Here we go.
Okay. They won't copyright that. It's
too quick.
Pretty inaudible.
It's Megan Trainor. Oh, you would be surprised what they copyright music on my channel for. I mean, I had Dion Gerber, who unfortunately passed away, lived down near Hermanus. And when the British and Irish Lions were in country, they were training. That's where they're based out of down there. And then we go up to Cape Town for the games. And he saw their bus go by. So he stopped on the side of the road, saw the bus coming, and he made a video for me, which I could show, showing that they were coming back from their training facility. But he had his car radio on, and it broke into song while that was playing. I got a copyright claim on that video.
Wow. So it was like, I can't even explain it. It's like your radio goes on while you're filming a video, and then you repost that video, and then you get a copyright claim. It's like it's so many layers.
No, it's crazy. I was in a hotel in Bristol after the Springboks, a horrible performance against the Bristol Bears. I went to that game in England, and I was in the hotel bar, and they were playing music, and I had to keep trying to find a spot so I could use the Wi-Fi and not pick up the music so I wouldn't get a copyright claim. It's insane. People wonder why, Chris, how come when you're traveling, you're often in your car broadcasting? Because it's the only place where I can shut the noise out. Everybody's playing music. You never realize how many places play music until you're worried about copyright strikes. It's not fair, man. Content creator struggles, first world problems. Hear me roar. Greta, you think you've got problems in Sweden? I've got real problems. What is this?
Oh,
Charles
man.
says farm clothes by Phala. Hey, somebody should start a Phala clothing line. In fact, we should do that. Make a merch store and just have Phala gear.
Yeah.
But we'd probably
Yeah.
get sued by Cyril's estate for stealing the name.
But I mean, you can put 2 P's instead of 1. or
There you
something.
go. Phala.
Or Phala. That's
Oh, there you go. Now it'll be like Snot Cup. Pa. Oh, Snot Cup. I haven't said that in a few months. Wow. I don't know. I tried to meet him. I couldn't. No, just kidding. I never tried to meet Snot Cup. Anyway. All right. Well, is there anything we should touch on before we wrap up? I mean, we're having fun and we probably go for hours, but I probably need to let you go. So,
Nothing else for me, Chris.
all
Nothing
right,
else for
yeah.
me.
You know, listen, I'll tell you what, Koketso and Nolu and Nzuzo are missing out, man. This is a fun broadcast today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is why whenever you say, "Hey guys, want to join Nako today?" I'm the first one that says yes. Let's go.
No, you've always been here for everyone. You've never said no. Koketsu has come the second most. He's usually here, but I think as I talked to you ahead of time, and just letting the audience know this now. I think the timing isn't ideal. It's right after work, and people are transporting, and you're working, you know, from a place where you're able to do this. Not everybody can, so we might want to look at doing this at a different time and a different day, which would actually help me out because Wednesdays are my radio night, so I've got that this evening, and typically something else comes up. Plus, I do Ronaldo during the daytime. So yeah, we might take a look at doing it because the audience seems to enjoy the K-Knocker. They like the conversation, talking about South Africa, an American view, a South African view, and you know, people feel really bad for me as a minority, pigmentally challenged in South Africa, so they tune into my program just to hear what I've got to say. Yikes. Anyway, no, I told people that because I'm going to put our picture up from when we took the photo at the meet and greet, and I'm going to put that up. And I said, to tell people about this program, I said, I always tell people I'm the pigmentation challenged member of the cast. Yeah. It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
My
it is
DNA
true.
doesn't provide enough pigmentation, man. That big flaming ball of gas in the sky burns me every time I see it. Joe Biden, I mean the sun. Yikes. Anyway, Dumo Denga, man, it's a pleasure as always. I'm glad you're doing well. Holiday season coming up. And listen, I got to say, brother, you could play linebacker or you could be a hooker in rugby, man. I had no idea you were that much of a force. Now, don't anybody infer from that I'm saying that he's obese. He's not. He's a big fellow. I mean, this guy is. I'm tall, but he could probably take me down in a heartbeat. I wouldn't mess with him. Let me just say this: I wouldn't get in an argument with Dumo on the street because I think I come out on the short end.
I wouldn't get on an argument with Chris because he's been in the military. So that's CQC, man. It works.
Well, see, I try to not let people know about those things, so I keep the advantage. So, you know, it's you want to catch them by surprise. Anyway, Dumo, thanks a lot, brother. We'll get together before then, but and I'll invite you to the Christmas programs if you're able to come on. I do a Christmas Eve, a Christmas Day, and a Boxing Day. I do a program, so I'll offer you an invitation to come on. But in the meantime, let me just it's that time. Tomorrow's the 1st of December. It's time to start wishing people for the festive season a Merry Christmas. So let me wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas, even though we're going to be in touch before that date comes up.
Same to you, Chris, and looking forward to those shows as well.
All right, thanks a lot. Dumo, I'll let you drop off, and then I'll wrap up the program from here, okay? Cheers, folks. Dumo Denga from Manpatria. Always a pleasure to have him on the program. And there he goes. He's gone. Thanks a lot for tuning in today. I'm contemplating a night owl as a brief one later this afternoon. No promises, but I'm contemplating it. I'm feeling better, although you saw me turn the mic off several times. The cough is still there, but I'm feeling it. It's coming back. So it's probably time to do it. And my thanks to my co-host today, Dumo Denga. Always fun. A great guy to be around. It was a real pleasure to see him in person when I was in South Africa. Great to have him back on the show. And I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this to be an interesting stream. I had a lot of fun with this one. No, Charles, it's not the spicy cough. It's just the regular variety crud. Yeah. I sound a bit better. Thank you, LG. I feel a bit better, but it's not 100%. But it's enough that I'm getting back in the swing of things. So this time, this is the second time I've been ill in the past couple of years. Instead of just driving through for my audience, I took people's advice and I've taken a little bit easier, mostly because I felt I needed to. So anyway, but no, I didn't have curry. It wasn't the curry. Thank you, Shireen. Yeah, it's just a good old fashioned influenza, something like that. But it's an upper respiratory one. symptom, kind of like the Rona spicy cough, but it is not that. So thank you for your concern, folks. Thank you so much. Be sure to hit the like button on your way out the door. And we're back to doing Nako. By the way, tomorrow we have Answer the Question with Rob Hutchison. Rob will be back, and we'll be talking from Dear SA. We'll be talking about issues in South Africa with Rob Hutchison tomorrow in a show that is overwhelmingly pigmentation challenged, as both Rob and I are very pale. Me more so than Rob. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and have a lovely day. And watch. By the way, I've got rugby coming up on the weekend, but I will get a Rumble live stream in to talk about what's going on in Arizona. What's going on in Arizona, which I can't do on this platform. It's unsafe. But I will talk about that in Arizona, because no matter what you say about it, you're going to be in trouble. Whether you're in favor, against, support, or you're for it anyway, or against it, you're going to get in trouble on this platform. So we're not going to do that here. You guys take care of yourselves, and thanks a lot. Where are my closing credits? Here they are. Cheers, everybody. I could put my Gucci on. I could wear my Louis Vuitton. But even with nothing on, bet I made you look. I made you look.